Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. This week I'm talking to Shay O'Carroll, co-founder of PixelMax, a hybrid working and virtual event hosting platform. Before the pandemic, very few of us had heard the term hybrid working, and most of us didn't really know what it was. Now, it's not only become a buzzword, it's also increasingly becoming the normal way of working and looks to stay that way. Like anything, hybrid working comes with both advantages and disadvantages. Greater freedom, but perhaps less spontaneous ideas and collaboration come to mind, and the whole model is sort of an experiment in progress. How can hybrid working be made better, and what long-term effects will it have both on businesses and individuals? And what about the rise of virtual events? How interactive can they become? Are they simply a good solution to bring us together in these strange and unpredictable times, or are they another digital tool that's increasing our distance from each other? It's around these subjects and many others that Shay and I chat about today. It's a fascinating listen. Hello Shay, welcome to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Hi Warren, how are you doing?
Yeah, great, thank you. Really looking forward to our conversation to talk about all things hybrid working and how technology can help and make that a better experience. You are co-founder of PixelMax, so I suppose for our listeners, we should start with, could you explain a little bit about PixelMax and where the concept came from?
Yeah, so PixelMax it's a platform effectively, but what we are is a virtual workplace. The phrase we use is where virtual creates a better reality. So what we're really looking to do is enhance the hybrid work experience, making that experience more interactive, engaging, and exciting. In terms of the journey of how we got there, we started off creating virtual factories in high-value manufacturing environments. That was very much pre-COVID, where we actually landed a really interesting contract with a large aerospace manufacturer, which at the point of the start of the pandemic, when the plane stopped flying, made for a really non-exciting week. But the point being that we kind of were developing these interactive spaces where people could meet virtually well ahead of it being popular within a pandemic. So what happened during, we basically took a pivot from that into virtual events, because that seemed to be where a lot of people were just striving to meet. And we were supposed to attend a large conference. It didn't work out. Long story short, we formed a steering committee, listened to what people wanted, didn't like during almost a perfect storm from a developing perspective. And a lot of event professionals started to feed into us what they wanted. What's happened since is that as we've started to move back towards hybrid working, people they've still been kind of striving for this level of engagement and interactivity. And they've been asking us to leave these worlds on. So instead of it being an eventing thing, it's now becoming a workplace thing, which is long story short, that's how we've come about.
But that's a lot of dramatic change. I suppose we all have, haven't we? But that is a lot of dramatic change for a relatively new startup business to go through. How's that felt as a kind of co-founder of the business? The emotional journey must have been quite a significant one.
Oh, it's been absolutely mad. I mean, my two co-founders of young children, I had a newborn at that point, actually, at the start of the pandemic. Okay. So obviously the pressure at that point is immense. When you're just looking at that and everything that's got your whole pipeline has just been decimated. And from that point, it was kind of, we just need to get on with this. We need to crack on, find a way forward. We've always been quite reactive as a business, especially when you're smaller. You're able to react more quickly. what's been most interesting and exciting is as we've moved through it and we've followed quite a logical process as we've developed, is that we've been able to maximize the investment journey at the same time. So as we came through back towards the end of 2019, we were effectively looking to get some kind of seed investment, and we became quite an interesting prospect at that point. As you can imagine, with what was going on, from getting that initial seed investment, we then very quickly, as in within 4 months, moved across to a pre-Series A of 2 million. So we raised 2.25 million in the space of 4 months.
Wow.
So at that point, we were sitting and thinking, wow, this is quite exciting.
This is it. We're in the right place, right time, right space.
Also quite overwhelming. But and since then, we've effectively gone from a team of 6 people to a team of 36, which is where we sit now. So we've, as a company, we sit there now. We are very hybrid as an organization, as in 40% of the organization are in office. The rest of us are all virtual. But as you can imagine, during that journey, been us as co-founders have sat there and thought, what on earth is going on?
Well, firstly, congratulations for the fundraising round, because that's not easy. That seed investment for a tech business can be nigh on impossible to find. So congratulations on that.
Thank
you.
Then
the rollout of it to get that scale of growth, from 6 to 36, again, it's no small step to do that, is it? We will talk about kind of the hybrid working and the kind of virtual world, but having had that success, is there any hints and tips for any listeners out there doing a fundraising round now on why you think you were successful?
For us, the feedback I've had is we kind of operate quite honestly. Myself and my co-founders, Rob and Andy, we're kind of quite complementary in terms of Rob Hilton's come from a project management background and he's more operations. He's coming as CEO. My other co-founder, Andy, has come in from a technology background. He's more chief he's now CIO, I think is the current thing. But the advice I would actually offer is to kind of follow your instincts and trust yourself. There was a time when we thought we were kind of telling investors what we wanted them to hear. And then we were actually reminded by them they were buying into the founders more than they were actually buying into the business per se. And to actually start to trust ourselves and trust our instincts. And I think the fact that you've got to that stage and the fact you're sitting in front of the investors, these are very, very experienced and intelligent people. And they're only there to help you actually grow and survive. And I think that element of honesty with your investors is something that, there's elements where you think, I just want to tell them what they want to hear. And then on reflection, it's just be as honest and open, because you're actually strengthening your board. You surround yourself with people that can offer really, really helpful advice as you grow. So I think, as long as you get the right investors, because there are also some real horror shows out there. So get the right ones, then trust them.
And be honest. I like that.
Yeah.
That's some really good hints and tips. Definitely would agree with that too. So I suppose my first question around kind of PixelMax, and we'll talk about the event side, but in this kind of hybrid working world, how is it different to video conferencing? How is it different? We've all got used to Teams and Zoom, but how is what you do different, Shay?
Everything that we do has an element of immersion. So to give you an example, our workplace product, you walk into your virtual workplace. So just in the same way as you have a physical office, when you check into your PixelMax office, you are walking through your office environment. You are engaging with your colleagues. There are areas where you can drop in for meetings informally with staff. You can build your own office space, which has something personal about you, has the most frequent people that you speak to and their availability, even through to the ability to order a coffee or some food online and to be able to actually have a lunch with somebody. And really what we're trying to do, a lot of people are very familiar with the idea of investing in their physical office. And what we're doing is basically extolling the virtues of investing in a complementary virtual workplace. So really removing that boundary of whether you're in the office or out of office, removing that barrier and leveling the playing field in terms of where you're at. But a lot of that requires a large level of engagement. We are naturally visual people. The game engine industry, the gaming industry has been solving these kind of problems in terms of collaboration for a long time, and it's actually out there in that space. It's been readily addressed in terms of bringing people together globally. all we're really doing is applying similar technology, but in an enterprise version. Our focus has always been on the human level. That engagement and interactivity we miss, but also on a well-being level. So all the way from the start, and people talk about us being events and then workplace. It's all the same thing, because your workplace is a series of events in it, whether it's a meeting, an internal launch, an external launch. There are lots and lots of things we're familiar with. An event is lunchtime. And one of the things we might do on a lunch hour is we have a well-being challenge. It might be a number of steps that you do with a colleague. It might be a yoga sequence that you do. And effectively, what we're building is a place where you can integrate lots of things that people will commonly do within a workplace. But regardless of where you are location-wise, you're removing those barriers. So it's really about driving that human interaction and engagement back into the business, but not forgetting at a corporate level, there's been a lot of brand dilution. You as a business, we've got companies who have invested fortunes in their head office because they want a particular look and feel for that. And what I suppose the route we're going is invest within your digital real estate as well. So we're building something which our clients own. They own their digital real estate in the same way as they own their physical. And then what we're doing is integrating lots of their existing workflows and systems like Microsoft or Slack, or there's a lot of integration we look at, but integrating within the digital environment the same as you are in the physical. So it's more around building something around your existing workplace, but representative of your business, and no business, in my experience, is the same.
No, absolutely not. And I love that, though. It's a representative. So you're sat at home, you've got your colleague in the office, but you're in the same kind of environment because I suppose you've used those skills you had in terms of working with the aerospace company in their factory. You're just replicating that as the online kind of working environment that people see and feel. What's really interesting, and when I did a bit of research, is I love that fact that you're not trying to compete though with the communication tools, are you? Like you say, you're integrating with all the other communication tools and best of breed out there that people can bring in to that environment. It's about creating the space and the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, the communication tools are utilities from our perspective. Like early heroes of the pandemic, without doubt, were platforms like Zoom and Teams, and they allowed businesses, like front and foremost, to continue functioning. And then, very quickly, things like Zoom fatigue or another have become a thing. For us, it's more about being able to integrate the things that people are doing already, and it's those utilities are still going to be there, but we kind of want to make sure that people are they're spending equal or more time working remotely. So it's kind of making that experience engaging and fun, and then enabling people to have a more enhanced experience as opposed to focusing on a very, very busy marketplace. I mean, if you looked at the number of companies, we did very, very in-depth reports that they're popping up in that flat space. And I'm not saying that those providers are bad. There's a lot of great products out there, but there's a lot of products owned by major companies. We're kind of trying to wrap that all within an engaging 3D environment and something that's more instinctive. So some people have likened us to a kind of website of the future, but it's something you're immersed in, and it's a place that you're arriving in, and you are being somewhere. And that the really important bit for us is that ability to just have an impromptu chat with someone, something that's informal, drop out, be able to do something creative, a whiteboard session or something like this. But it's really like focusing on that level of engagement. Really interesting to hear you go back to what we were doing in aerospace, and you're absolutely right. It was what they had was a load of corporates or execs that were flying from all over the world to meet in one location to discuss maybe 5 different locations. So our simple logic was, let's recreate the location. Let you just all meet in there virtually. It was a much harder sell back then, if I'm going to be
imagine.
because we have people saying there is no chance our exec board are going to meet online. And if you think about during the progress we've made during the pandemic, we've had to do it. So a lot of people that were, I don't want to say fixing the ways, that sounds quite judgmental, but people that were comfortable with a certain way of working have had to adapt, which is what's opened up this opportunity to embrace it.
Yeah, but I think that is across the board, isn't it, with hybrid working? There's a lot of businesses, and to a certain degree, I was one of them that was a little skeptical about kind of how effective would work from home be and that kind of thing. But we all had to do it, didn't we? We all got in, had to immerse in it. We all had to trust our teams. But the piece that's been missing, which is interesting from where you say PixelMax sits, is for me, and it's that, coin that phrase, the water cooler moments, isn't it? It's how do you get those interactions, and how do you be human when actually, typically, if you've got half the team working at home, half the team in the office team are having that, but those at home are just sat there responding to emails, maybe jumping on the occasional team or Zoom calls, but there's none of that, being human moments during the course of the day, and it can get quite lonely.
Totally, and it's that informal communication as we've gone through, and that we've put names on things, but that element of informal communication is a big part of the workplace. And if you think about from a creativity perspective, a lot of creativity or creative elements of a business, or when people are working together, is an informal moment. It's not in a formal meeting where you're doing it. And for us, especially with our teams, we practice what we preach. We work in our environment, we meet in our environment, we have dropout sessions or drop-in sessions and all of these things. But if you have a moment and you just want to catch hold of someone and just collar them and say, listen, just meet me literally by the water cooler, because of course we've done that. But let's have a little chat about that, and getting someone to be able to walk in and then be able to hear what you're having as a conversation, and people to be able to build something naturally. I think that is, especially for us as creatives, as innovators, it was something that was very difficult to do remotely. So quite a lot of the things that are features within our platform are actually things that we needed as we were innovating through a remote working time, basically. So it's not that everything was planned. I think some things were just necessity. But it's absolutely so really critical. The other thing that's really interesting on that side is that we run, obviously having a relatively small office, just with the ratio of hybrid working. We do meetings where we've got people in front of us and then we've got people remotely. And if you just imagine the time lag of what you're presenting, it's quite difficult to navigate. But as we're running these things and we're experiencing the challenges like that front on, in the past with PowerPoint, you'd want to see a preloaded slide. Now you kind of want to see what's currently live whilst you're talking about the next slide, which is a really interesting challenge. But as we're working through that, we're getting feedback via text. So we're enabling the teams to feedback, and people who within a physical or virtual meeting, which is relatively intimidating, and people who would normally not have a voice are getting a voice. So there are actually some really interesting nuances that we didn't expect, where we're getting it was, in fact, it was our wellbeing team that was set up by two people who messaged it during a team meeting saying, any chance we could look at doing this? And we thought, what a great thing. Again, never saw it coming. So yeah, the advent of this is kind of, some of these things have just popped up out of nowhere.
It's interesting, isn't it, in how tech develops, and but we have your ears open, haven't you? And can't be just channeled down, right, this is the route we're going. But clearly, from that opening piece, that's not what you and your co-founders and now the whole team are all about. It's about listening, getting feedback, and making those improvements.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because it's all good and well us listening, and we've formed steering committees of professionals with every product we've developed, whether it was virtual factories, whether it was for events, all the way through to workplace. And we've been really fortunate in terms of the consultancies. Like, one of the largest workplace consultancies in the world was working with us on the last one. And there's an element of you are actively listening to people, and then that's also feeding directly into your development roadmap. It's a really fine balance, listening and developing at the same time, because you need focus. And if I were to say to you, as an organization, we often go through a process whereby we'll have 3 really tough weeks where we really work hard to refine and drill down to where are we bringing benefits to our clients, where is the value to our clients. And a lot of this integration pieces come out on the back of it. We do have built-in video conferencing tools and diaries, but there's some amazing companies out there doing things like that. So why would we try and better them? But it's the process of listening to your team, listening to your clients, and then also informing your development roadmap is a really fine balance. And I'd say as an organization, it's one of the things that we really we commonly are focusing on.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose you've also done quite a lot of research. So I'm quite intrigued just to see what some of that research says about just generally with hybrid working, what some of those sort of more positive and negative effects have been, Shay. Can you share some of those insights with us?
Yeah. I mean, there's some stats, and I'll give you a little insight into those. And we are actually there is a thought leadership piece we've put a lot of time into, which we will be releasing imminently. I think we're in
Okay.
the final revision of that. The one of the interesting things when I was just looking through actual stats was that before COVID, we had around 85% of employees were in the office working every day or most of the days. And post-COVID, you've got 32% wanting to work remotely every day, 52% wanting to do 2 to 3 days remotely, and only 12% wanting to work remotely once a week. It kind of demonstrates that we've moved, and we've now got 84% of a workforce wanting a hybrid model. So it's almost flipped on its head. When we start to look at things like that, you are fully frontally looking at the challenge that a lot of organizations are out there are asking. And the question that kind of keeps coming back to us is how big a piece of real estate do we need, and how much of that is now going to be digital. So that there's a lot more in terms of the research that we do, but that for me is something that's been quite outstanding as we've moved through this process to see such a massive change in such a short period of time.
Yeah, exactly, Shay. I think it's that change in such a short space of time, isn't it? And I think most, I suppose, entrepreneurial businesses, but even those forward-thinking corporates are working now towards and implementing change so that there is this mix between hybrid and real world, and all of those kind of things are happening. But you can see that there is going to be some businesses that are left behind, and in this kind of world where resource and people are scarce, finding good people has always been a challenge, but it is now even more challenging than it's ever been. You're going to have to be in that new world, aren't you? You can't be in a kind of world where you are making people come into the office 5 days a week, 9 to 5, in kind of an office environment.
I mean, I can speak for us as a business, and we have to absolutely. In the marketplace at the moment, developers especially, but anyone of particular talent, I've always seen when we interview people, it's our job to win those people into the business as opposed to the other way around. And that's normally the way it gets to when we're doing final interviews. And as we're seeing, you need to be able to offer the right work package to the right people, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're forcing people to do one or another. We've got people who prefer to come into the office. They live in a small place, and maybe the city centre, it's convenient. They just want to get out of the house. They're social. But then at the other extreme, you've got people who want to be at home. They're concerned about travelling. I don't think that's going to go away. I think some naturally, all of us are going to be paranoid as we move forward. And I think it's having the right set of tools to be able to adapt to what people want and put the right package in place, or flexibility in place even, to work around your employees and the staff, whilst getting the most out of people, which again comes back to the point of engagement. But it's for us, that's been an interesting challenge. When we came back into the office, we were very starkly aware of the fact we'd employed people in Bristol, in Northern Ireland, and it was it just didn't matter. And now we're getting to the point where some of those people have actually moved to be closer to the office because they feel like they want to be part of the team. Onboarding just under 30 people in this period of time when nobody was in the office. I mean, interviews, everything. It's the funniest thing for me. I mean, this isn't particularly formal or relevant to the business, but you don't know what height anybody is.
No.
And you just meet all these people, and it's just completely. I mean, there's an element of that that's really nice because things that maybe in the background people maybe thought they were being judged for being from certain backgrounds or heights or particularly short like I am, maybe being judged, or corporately struggling with advancement. I could be as tall as you want right here.
Yeah, it's just it's strange because we run sort of learning and development programs for business leaders, and we've had during the whole period we've used Zoom, but we've had 12 business leaders on the call, and then recently we brought them into the real world, and you see them looking at each other, trying to recognize each other because everybody's different shapes and sizes to what you expect, and all you get is a head and shoulders shot. Yeah, no, definitely. I suppose one of the things to ask though is, if we're moving more to this kind of, and perhaps we'll touch about on Facebook's announcements and all where they're going, but we're moving more to this kind of virtual world, so maybe not just in a kind of work environment, because I can clearly see the benefits of that, and we immerse ourselves in that. Do you think there's a danger, I suppose, that we become less human?
Yeah, it's a real risk. It's something that we are particularly aware of. So we, from the start of this journey where we moved from, well, just again pre-pandemic, we've worked closely with an occupational psychologist called Sarah Clark, because we've needed advice. We were worried about how to obviously employing this level of people, but so many clients asking the same recurring questions around people and happiness. And I think as much as I'd love to say we've got a tool for that, I think if anything, we need to be bolstering our HR function, spending more time checking people are okay. We have buddy sessions, we have well-being moments, and they're all good and well. But I think from a HR perspective, I think it's something that we all need to really focus on as we move forward. It's not been easy for a lot of people. I don't think it's going to get any easier for a while. And the human element of a business, and we obviously have a responsibility to care for our staff, but we genuinely do. And I think it's one of those things as we move forward. We just need to be really conscious of the fact that everybody has been through a tough time, and just taking the time out to speak with people. I'm not saying I'm amazing at it, but some of my colleagues, Andy and Rob, are particularly good at taking time out to take time with staff. And I mean, my kind of initiatives is I started the Hot Wing Challenge on a Friday, just to get people out of the work environment and have a bit of fun. And we all have our own styles, I suppose. But I think that human element is something that ought not to be lost. And I mean, for me, I couldn't wait to get back to a gig. I love meeting in person. I enjoy the idea of. I'm a very sociable person, so it's not that it's an all or nothing. And that human element, I don't think any of us can lose sight of it. We've seen some amazing things. We did a event for UEFA, and we actually did something. We always try to do something that you couldn't do in the real world. So it was the Women's Champions League final, UEFA Champions League final. We did an event for that, which was an outreach project around attracting young women into the sport, not necessarily footballers, all sorts of people. One of my favourite moments was when we connected a young fan with her hero, and she clicked on something expecting to see a video, and then she's literally chatting to one of her idols. So you do something like that, and then you stand back and go, wow, this is really impactful stuff that you would never really get to do in the real world. So yeah, it's definitely a focus, if not a passion of ours.
Brilliant, fantastic. And in talking about those events and all of that side of things, have you seen virtual events continue, or are people moving back into the real world in terms of events?
It's a really interesting dynamic at the moment. So, I mean, we as a business have been really embracing moving back into physical events. We have continued to run virtual events. We just did another one for UEFA 2 weeks ago, actually, which was the draw for the Euros next year. As we kind of migrate towards what we've called always on, or the virtual workplace, it's kind of becoming a series of events that are happening more often. So whereas during the pandemic, there was a lot of people meeting for major events, what we're seeing now are a lot of brands that we're working with, and lots of little interesting metaverse type projects popping up. We're actually delivering and rolling them out as a series of events as they get feedback from people who they're meeting with as to what they want it to look like. Because we use real world architects to build the virtual worlds, and we build it around the parameters of what people want to do in the environment. The best way to do that is to work with your client to explore the activities you want to carry out. So we're actually seeing this migration now into more and more shorter events, which effectively are in some cases just becoming something that's on all the time because it's being used so often. And that's very much the roadmap that we're seeing at the minute. I mean, there's some completely we've been blown away recently. There's one project more in the blockchain or crypto world, and we're working. I can't go into detail at the moment, but I think we're going to be delivering on that. I genuinely think it could be one of the biggest metaverse projects in the world, and it's just come about. We cannot believe the momentum that some projects are getting. Obviously, when you've got a world like crypto, they move faster, but some of the things we're seeing right now, it's like we can't believe that the momentum that things are having. But again, they don't want something basic, boring, that isn't engaging. Wants to keep their people want. In the gaming world, we call it AAA. But people want something that feels like the real world, or is more exciting, or as exciting as, or you're getting more out of it. But yeah, it's an interesting transition.
Yeah, I'm sure it definitely sounds like it. And it sounds like it's a great opportunity to be creative, but there's clearly challenges that go with it when you're running the business day to day, I'm sure. So I suppose one of those things we'd use that term metaverse, and we've seen Facebook and their announcements. So where's your prediction as an early kind of adopter, an early business in this space? Where's your prediction for, where we're going to be in 5, 10, 15 years time in terms of the metaverse?
It's interesting to see people the absolute monsters in the industry hypothesizing about the metaverse and what it is. I've worked with a lot of people who've been delivering versions of this for a long time, whether it's for inductions into hospitals, which we've worked on, or teaching very complex metabolic processes. And it's not new to us per se. I don't want to sit here and say we've been doing it forever, but we have been doing elements of what you would now consider as a metaverse, and we've been researching it academically. We've got 2 award-winning papers in virtual reality, inducting kids into proton beam therapy, and augmented reality in education. And they're both award-winning papers. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to validate the effectiveness of the technology and its use. So if I was going to go then to answer you from a prediction, my prediction is it will start doing the things where we see the most value. We've got one large corporate client who have 40 people who are real leaders who meet up globally, and they're meeting within their version of a metaverse, as you would say, for their business. They're then developing that, and they're using that to roll out their products within their consecutive regions in all different languages. So I can see these high value activities where people are getting a huge amount of benefit for them as an organization, perhaps saving a lot of overhead. And let's not forget about the environmental impact of all the travel and things like that. So I think we will naturally fall into the areas where we're seeing the most benefit. And then as naturally within any of these technologies, we always focus on removing the barrier to entry, which is primarily cost. It used to be cost and adoption, but we've really been helped on adoption.
That's kind of been blown away, really. We've all adopted, haven't we?
So for us, it's about investing in like server-side technology all the way through to client base, where people can actually have their own versions, which maybe you're logging into as your workplace. So I think we'll move into that quite quickly. I dare not look further than 1 year, because I think the progress we're going to make in 1 year would be more than I would expect within 10. The way things are going at the moment.
So do you think that we're going to, the kind of, there's adoption already in the gaming world.
Yeah.
You're bringing and others are bringing adoption into the workplace. Do you think they're going to be the 2 drivers that mean that, we converse in everyday life in terms of in a kind of virtual metaverse kind of world?
So I do think that's going to happen. I'm already seeing it happening in certain community type projects. So there's one that we're doing for the architectural community called Material Source, and you actually have 39 of the world's leading brands from an interior fit out perspective. And there's actually a physical place that's been built to showcase that in Manchester. And we're building a digital version of that where people can then globally access it, and things are available, and you can obviously change up content more easily than you would physical content. And I think that migration from a purely physical delivery to a hybrid of the two is very natural. And I definitely feel that's going to be the way forward. I think what I particularly like about that project in particular is that they haven't lost the physical. So that ability to meet up and to bring that element. From what I'm seeing in the marketplace, absolutely, I think the two are coming together. There's another project we're working on, which is more around first responder training. And this is a company who are global first responder trainers, but it's quite advanced in terms of what they deliver. So they're delivering things like first responder training for mass casualty incidents in response. You can imagine what a mass casualty incident might be. So you've got companies like that. They're delivering that. They used to travel around and deliver things. Now what they want to do is focus on having the stuff that they repetitively do that can be enriched by our workflows within a digital realm, but then overlaying that with real events and people actually acting out the scenes and doing things like that. So it'll be a combination of the two, but I think that there's a line which one benefits the other, and I think that's where we'll stick.
Brilliant, fantastic. And from your own business, from an investment perspective, when Facebook announces they are going to effectively pivot into the metaverse, how does that make you feel in terms? Because that must make it I would say, easier to source investment, doesn't it? Have you talked to your existing seed investors, and what's the
Yeah.
feeling about the space that you're in right now?
So our the two main investors we have right now are Procura and Act Capital. So Procura, a Manchester-based firm, Act Capital are based across in Australia. They are really complementary to us as a business. We've been talking to them for around 4 months about the Series A, upcoming Series A, and timing. Of course, they want to. They're already coming back in on those rounds. And for us, it's kind of optimizing preloading resource, which is what we've always done. So we make sure we've got the resource there ahead of the demand, because you can't not deliver. And it's the kind of the opportunity in the marketplace. And it's to say we have regular catch-ups with these guys. It's at least once a week at the moment. And so absolutely there's an appetite for that. And it's finding that balance between the amount you dilute and at which point and which valuation you go with. We are also potentially looking at a third party coming in who can help us to kind of maximize the opportunity that's coming our way, just based on the level of global opportunities that we're seeing. And that they're significant, and with that comes infrastructure, which we are going to need to continue to evolve. So the investment journey mostly headed up by Rob Hilton, who's CEO in the business, and he's really good at continually keeping them up to date. But yeah, it's something we always keep a close eye on, because it's a fine balance in terms of finding the right moment. But yeah, I think we're quite fortunate, if I'm honest. Like some of the guidance we're getting, it's really like top rate advice, and we feel like we're almost benefiting from an incredible board with the investors we have behind us.
That's brilliant, isn't it? That's how it should work, isn't it? And when it works, that's how it should work. And it's great to hear you've got two great investors on board. I suppose turning to you personally then, because doing a little bit of sort of research on you, Shay, before you became a founder in PixelMax, you had a really successful career kind of in the corporate world as somebody else's kind of employee. So
Yeah.
perhaps share with us, how have you found that experience, the transition from kind of being a successful person in the corporate world to actually starting your own business and going on your own entrepreneurial journey?
So my last role, so before that I was working for Canon, which was a true corporate role, and I moved from that, then working for a company who were building a tech division. So I was the fourth employee of that tech division. Within 2.5 years, we grew that to I think 52 staff, I think 3.2 million turnover, and that experience was amazing. Got to work under an amazing MD, a lady called Michelle Grief, who just inspired a lot of us. We all kind of bought into her as a person. Towards the end of that journey, there was a change in management, which I won't go into too much detail on. But what I did do, I say we because Andy Sands, one of my co-founders, also worked in that business. But what we did learn in that role was the cultural importance of investing in your staff and really enabling your team to evolve and develop. When we moved into this role, where we basically just moved away from, it was architecture and construction, we started again in virtual factories, because it's the right thing to do. We didn't want to go and start trying to poach customers. It's just not appealing to us. So we went and started from scratch, and we started to build a company. But from the start, the importance that we've held around investing in the right people, being as honest as we can, allowing people to give us the ideas that are going to fuel the future of the company. And even to now, we've got a culture where we've got internally a committee of people asking the same questions amongst the staff as we are at a board level. And we're really looking forward to seeing their feedback. So we're kind of running feedback in tandem now, because the people we've been able to employ with the benefit of investment, I mean, I've never worked with a better team in my life. It's absolutely incredible. And some of the ideas that come out of that, it's outstanding. So I suppose what we kind of learned from traditional corporate worlds, and, pre-COVID, I'm not trying to speak badly of employers here. But for us, we've kind of learned to invest in your staff and then listen to them and allow them to, that fine balance I talked about before, which is really important. But being able to do that, we were doing an interview yesterday, and in that interview, we were being grilled on precisely this. And that's how interviews are now. We really want this member of staff. And effectively, with the three co-founders were being grilled by this potential member of staff. And they were asking about just this and how we operate these processes, how we listen to staff. And, these are people who've come from corporate backgrounds who will not do it again. So it's interesting to see that, but that is what we've learned from. For me, perhaps a bit too much honesty sometimes. When we were like 6 or 7 people, we used to have a few beers in the office, and then there came a point where it's like, it's just not okay anymore. It's becoming a bit raucous. It just doesn't feel right. And migrating away from being, I suppose, not over familiar, but there's a point. I think there's a line between work and play, and it's respecting that as well.
There is a journey, isn't there? I think I can remember that as grew our businesses, and when you're there, that handful of people, it's just natural, isn't it? Because you're a cohort of like-minded individuals who have come together with a focus, passion, and belief. And one or two of you may own the business, but you're all in it together. And it's how do you keep that energy and spirit, and that kind of through growth, isn't it? But how do you get the balance between actually it's some of the things you do then, you can't act in that way when you're 30, 40, 50 people. It's just not possible. So it's interesting to see that I love that idea of you posing the same questions that you're all discussing around the board table about strategy and growth and where next to a sort of a cohort of employees and team members as well.
It wasn't my idea. It was actually Rob and Andy who came up with that strategy. So I can't take credit. I've got to
we'll give them credit for it, but it's great.
I will do. I'll pass that on to them.
So, how in the last few years you've talked about start of COVID, first child came along, all of that. How are you finding balancing kind of family life and personal success alongside the success you're having within the business, Shay?
I love you said personal success, which as a co-founder, any co-founder knows you're not personally successful at this point. You're just paying yourself a wage, and it's that simple. But on the family life,
if you're doing that, you're doing well. If you're paying yourself a wage, Shay.
Yeah, absolutely. As opposed to go back 3 years and we were putting our savings in to pay the wages. But I suppose on a personal level, for me, I've got like a kind of shack in the lakes. That every weekend, myself, my partner, and our young child, we go across to, and it's literally like a digital detox. I get there, I listen to vinyl, I do enjoy a scotch, I'll read a paper, and I kind of have a digital detox and just spend time with my family, with my young son, with my partner, and we literally live quite a wholesome life where we enjoy walking around and doing all these walks and all these things that probably seem quite traditional. So it's for me, that family side, that support network is what's got me here personally. So obviously you've got to put as much back into that as you possibly can. It's also really great fun. My other 2 co-founders are the same, and we go through elements. We keep our eyes on each other. So Rob, who we mentioned, we by force made him take 2 days off the other week because he was working too hard. He was writing too many emails into the night, so we literally banned him from work for 2 weeks. And we do have to keep an eye on each other for that balance. And I've always said from the start, it's got to be fun. We do make sure that we have fun along the way, with the staff, and we've got some fun trips coming up that they're corporate and they're really relevant to the business and they're building partnerships, but we make sure that we enjoy ourselves and we have a good laugh along the way, because I think that's as important as anything else, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we only live the life once, don't we? So we've got to have fun and enjoy it along the way. But your shack in the lakes sounds idyllic, actually, with vinyl and just walks and time with the family. Definitely. It's interesting, though, that digital detox is important to you in a business that, you're growing this kind of this virtual world where people will interact digitally. So for me, that's quite reassuring, because that's saying there's people behind this business that are human and understand that need of separation.
Yeah, we all do. I mean, the thing is, my background, I'm not into football. I love gigs and I love live gigs. I like my music live and in person. And I did attend some virtual gigs during the pandemic, and I didn't enjoy them in the same manner. And I think, it's all good and well saying that the future is meta, or, the future is the future is what people want it to be, in my opinion. And it's enabling people to have the right tools to get on with stuff. The one thing it does enable is the fact that I can go and work from my shack as opposed to being in the office, and maybe work, Friday afternoon from there and make the most of the time with the family. And that balance, that for me is an example of a benefit of hybrid working, is I get more time with my family as opposed to sitting in traffic. But the in-person stuff, it never goes away. I saw something recently, I'm not sure if you've seen it. It was released by the Icelandic tourist board called the Icelandverse. It's fantastic. It's
I haven't
literally a
seen
parody
that.
where they are just telling you about how lovely Iceland is as a place to go and visit. And I really enjoyed that perspective, because it's like full immersion, and the guy steps into a geothermal spa, and it's a fantastic like perspective, I think, in terms of, let's not all just focus on the digital element of this. Let's just do the bits that enable us to do more of the bits that we enjoy.
Yeah, perfect. What a great way to end the podcast. But I do end with one final question: is, in this journey you're on, what does success mean to you, Shay?
I mean, success, like I've already touched on one bit, which is spending as much time as possible with my family, especially with a young son. I think that's as good as it gets in terms of time. I've always said, I mean, when we were first going through investment questions, and I was asked where I want the business to go, and I said that I'd like to be sitting on your side of the table, and in a position where I didn't really have to think about money. I think it can be a massive distraction, but I don't think you need that much either for it not to be. And I suppose one of the things that I found since investment is that we've all been able to focus on doing the best we possibly could, as opposed to the distraction of things like cash flow, which is always there, don't get me wrong. But for me, success is, I mean, the team that we are building, if we maintain that trajectory with a bunch of people we love working with, who we all see as an amazing team, that's successful. We continue to work on some amazing projects. We're working with some of the biggest brands in the world. And go back 2.5 years ago, some of the clients that we were advised to turn away from brought so much stress. But if we continue to be aligned to some world-leading projects, got an amazing bunch of people around us, and we're all spending great time with our families, I think that for me feels like a great level of success. The interesting thing for us is our clients. We're the spade manufacturer per se in the gold rush. We've got lots of clients who use our tool to deliver metaverses. We've seen 2 or 3 clients now that are becoming multimillionaires. And that's not for us to do. We are just giving people the tools to do, and they're taking their risk. But for us to keep being able to do that and work with those people and enable them, it feels great. It's really nice to see people like putting in the same effort you are, or you have, and then watching them, albeit sooner than us, have a great time.
Succeed. I like it. So you defined as the spade in the gold rush. I like that.
Yeah.
It's been great having a conversation with you, Shay. It's great to have learned a little bit more about the virtual world, the metaverse, but you're also you as an individual and some of the things that are important to you. So thank you for coming on the Evolve to Succeed podcast. If people do want to know a little bit more about you and a little bit more about PixelMe, where can they go?
Yep. So it's pixelmax.com is the website. We're on LinkedIn as PixelMax, Twitter at PixelMaxWorld. There is going to be some really interesting stuff coming out soon in terms of the thought leadership piece and the workplace product demonstrator, which I think are going to get a nice bit of traction. And there are some, I can't talk about that yet. I was going to talk, we're about to be on some well-known marketplaces as well as a product, but I'm not in a position where I can mention those yet. But coming to a marketplace near you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Shay.
Thank you, Warren. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed, and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.